It took 2 years to build. It cost £60 million. It's the most modern school in the country. A flagship for building schools for the future. It's the HLC, the Hadley Learning Community.
Now I'm in it, living it, running it, and it's amazing, really. It sounds arrogant to say there's not much I would change, but there is very, very little I would change. You know, you're never going to get all of that down to the last detail. You're not going to get it completely right. But yeah, I'm very happy with it. It's just been immense. Immense.
1 year after opening in 2006, is the HLC an education campus fit for the 21st century? And have the first year's results been any good? The HLC is an extended school. Hailed as the most expensive school in Britain when it opened, it was built for the borough of Telford and Wrekin by Interserve, who'll maintain it for the next 25 years under a facilities management contract. It has a 1,200-place secondary phase, co-located with a 200-place primary school. There's a special school for 165 children with profound learning difficulties. There's an early years unit and community and sports facilities which are shared with the people of Hadley. In a far-sighted move, the borough recruited Dr. Jill Eatough as principal, 18 months ahead of the opening. Jill worked with architects and designers to stamp her mark on the layout and the equipment installed in the HLC.
Okay, well, we're going to have 1.5 doors for ICT, really.
We followed the process in a 10-part series, culminating in the opening of the school in September 2006. Now, after 3 terms, we've come back to see how things have gone. Morning briefing, July 2007, 2 days before the end of term. The theatre's been left untidy, with tables cluttering up the place. So straight after briefing, Jill's right on the facility manager's case.
Hello, have you seen the theatre?
No.
Stuff everywhere. It's not right.
Being a private finance initiative, or PFI school, facilities management is in the hands of the developer, Interserve.
OK, I'll leave it with you anyway. All right. Somebody should have checked this morning, not us, that it was ready for school. Sometimes the wheels come off a little bit, but on the whole, but we just like to keep the pressure on. Good morning. Good morning. It's a bit all hands to the pump today, I think. Good morning. You all right?
Jill makes regular trips round the school, keeping her finger on the pulse.
Good morning, everybody. Aren't you supposed to stand up when I come into the room? OK, on this wall, big boards, one there and one sort of down there. Which way are you ready? Can you reset some of these tiles? It just annoys me and I can't reach them.
It is a good school, but school.
But actually, Nisha, she's been a bit modest because she's one of our success stories. Because this young lady didn't smile for the first term, did you? No, she found it hard moving, but she's done really, really well. We're really proud of her.
At the end of the first year at the HLC, Jill Eatough's able to reflect on the enormity of the job she's had to do.
It's been an emotional rollercoaster, and I think, nationally, what we've done, people are going to be building schools all over the country, but you cannot get away from how emotional it has been.
Emotions have been rather high at times as a consequence of the HLC taking staff and students from a well-loved secondary school. The Alton Park School was closed down and demolished by the local authority, against the wishes of many parents and pupils.
Young people coming here who all their walls had been removed, staff who had worked in another school maybe for a long time, coming here totally feeling out of sorts, and managing that and developing people to do the things you need them to do and to get young people to meet their expectations has been a massive, massive job.
It's not as good as Alton Park though, because in Alton Park you had a good atmosphere. This place just feels like really closed in. It's just really horrible.
I think Alton Park was a lot better. I mean, I'm getting used to this place, so it won't be so bad in a while, but still prefer Alton Park.
Some pupils from Alton Park found it difficult to settle in. There were tears in the toilets and 1 or 2 incidents of poor behaviour. Some staff found it difficult to adapt to life at the glitzy new HLC. The strength and the endurance of emotional ties to a former school was something that the school leadership underestimated during the first term.
When you open a new school with the children, particularly children who've been in a previous closed school for a long time, there is a sense of bereavement, and I'm quite open about the fact that we didn't take that on board initially. You think they'll be walking around starry-eyed and eternally thankful for this fabulous experience that we're giving them, but that wasn't the case. The children were fairly nonplussed about it. I think that's probably the bit we missed.
I was very keen that we got them straight into lessons on those first couple of days, and I just wonder now in retrospect whether I spent enough time settling the kids in.
Not doing enough to manage the emotional needs of pupils and failing to anticipate all the consequences of closing a school are experiences that Jill feels other school leaders should be aware of.
I don't think anybody in the whole sort of building schools of the future, new schools, has really clocked that how do we deal with the kids and make them feel more settled. Because when they arrived in September, it was like, I don't know how I relate to this place, I don't know how I relate to these people.
Paul Topping was appointed as Vice Principal, Head of Secondary. The job was his first at head teacher level, and after being pretty hands-on supporting Paul for the first term, Jill Eatough had to adjust her role as principal.
I'd really like to see him every week.
I need to learn not to be a secondary head teacher any longer, and that's what I have spent this year unpicking, and I have to be very careful that I'm not saying to Paul, are we doing this and are we doing that? But at the same time, I have an absolute obsession about getting everything right.
After a year in charge, Paul felt it was time to stamp his mark on the HLC. In the last week of the summer term, he called a meeting with his secondary leadership team. There'll be some changes next year.
I really wanted this afternoon to be part of a new beginning, because I felt very much over the course of the year that I wanted to change the structure of the leadership. So, this is the new leadership team, and I've agreed with Jill a little earlier on in the year that I would change titles, because I've been very unhappy with the title Vice Principal Head of Secondary, not so much from a status point of view, but simply from the fact that it confuses people, because I often get people in the building who think I'm the deputy head teacher, or think I'm the vice principal, or think that Jill is the head teacher, and I just think that causes confusion amongst the children and the parents and the community at large. So we agreed that she would call herself a principal and I will become a head teacher.
Paul also announced some promotions. Head of Science Jim Smith was made a deputy head with responsibility for curriculum planning.
One of the big moves is towards vocational education, towards travel to learn, and towards Campus Telford.
And Head of Maths Emma Knights was made an assistant head with responsibility for data tracking.
By September, I want every student to have individual targets for every single subject. I want it to be on a sticker, I want it to be in their planners, I want to be really, really clear to everybody what their targets are.
Head of Humanities Dan Roycroft was made an assistant head with responsibility for homework.
This is homework, this is what is done at home with parents, with their support, and if we haven't got their understanding and support, then we may as well forget it.
The HLC's school improvement partner, Damien Bibby, was invited to attend.
My role is as a partner with the school. I don't have an inspection brief at all. It's really simply to ask you questions about what is happening how you know it's happening, and whether you're confident that you're going to achieve improvement. I am what's sometimes called a critical friend, with the emphasis on critical.
The secondary curriculum was developed by Paul Topping in the 12 months before the school opened. He consulted widely with senior staff to get their input and agreement.
As it stands there, I've worked on 5 one-hour lessons, effectively 2, break, 1, break, 2. Now, I appreciate your thoughts on this.
I mean, as a practical subject, great, not a problem. But any other concern, though, is as you go down the ability level, time on task, you have to be very careful on designing the lesson to make it small changes throughout that lesson.
From now on, Jim Smith would be responsible for the curriculum.
So it's like, what's best for us?
But he was to get a taste of what the SIP's role as a critical friend meant in practice.
One thing that's being sort of bandied about in future school thinking is basically learning pathways. So you have an academic route, a mixed academic and vocational, then a key skills core, because we have to, and vocational qualifications. And I think heads of faculty look at if this would suit them and where they could find qualifications to fit what they're going to offer.
It does feel a little bit like a timetable rather than a curriculum. It looks like a grammar school timetable for LP1. It looks like a technical timetable for LP2 and a secondary mod timetable for LP3. Maybe I wonder whether you need to think really clearly what the nature of curriculum is, as opposed to something you can timetable and put kids into. Have you considered going to a completely different kind of Key Stage 3 teaching? You know, project-based learning in mini schools there's plenty of good practice around, and I wonder whether you've looked at other models of good practice in terms of curriculum. Now, I don't know, Paul, whether this can be done as quickly as the autumn term.
I think there's no reason why we couldn't look at rechanging. I mean, I would very much like to change the look of Key Stage 3 completely.
Because at the moment it feels as if you've taken a curriculum that belonged to another school and the children that belong to that curriculum and have managed that for 12 months. But really, for future thinking, you ought to be at the cutting edge of curriculum, not at the 60s edge of curriculum. And I would caution you against trying to push it through on some kind of artificial time basis. It's too important to rush it.
I take your point, this is just one sort of model that we can just destroy and start again.
Well, I'm not suggesting you destroy it. I'm suggesting that you maybe think about having a bit more time to really bottom this out.
For the head and his new deputy, it was a rather bruising encounter.
No, she's a very sharp lady, and quite rightly, in her position of school improvement partner, points out things to us from different angles often, and she's a great analyst.
I would caution you against writing the timetable first and fitting the curriculum in second.
You've got to stand there and take the brickbats and the criticisms and still come out with a plan which meets the needs of the children. That's really what it's all about in the end. But there's a learning curve for everybody here, and Jim's is probably as steep as anybody else's.